I never expected a simple Wi-Fi glitch to shatter my hidden life. When my older neighbor offered to fix it, sparks flew, but so did secrets from my past, family rejection, and a betrayal that nearly broke us. In a world that judges love like ours, could we fight for a chance at happiness? This is my raw journey from denial to defiant self-acceptance. The storm slammed into Chicago like a warning from the heavens, Lake Michigan's waves crashing against the shore as thunder shook my high-rise apartment. I'm Alex, 35, a freelance graphic designer, and that night my Wi-Fi crashed at the worst possible moment. A client pitch, my shot at a contract that could elevate my career, was due in hours, and the router's blinking red light mocked my rising panic. This wasn't just any client. Morrison and Associates, a prestigious marketing firm downtown, had finally given me a chance after months of cold emails and networking events where I'd nursed overpriced drinks while trying to make connections that felt forced. The project brief sat open on my laptop screen, a complete rebrand for a nonprofit supporting LGBTQ plus youth. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, still hiding parts of myself while designing campaigns about authenticity. No internet meant no submission, no stability in a freelance world where one missed deadline could unravel months of hustle. My phone's data flickered uselessly in the concrete jungle of my loop apartment, and cafes were shuttered against the storm. The nearest Starbucks was 8 blocks away, and the rain pelted my windows like bullets. I'd already tried restarting the router 6 times, unplugging cables, even reading through the manual that came with it, a pathetic booklet that assumed everyone was a network engineer. Desperation clawed at my chest, my mind racing through dwindling options. I thought about calling my sister back in Ohio, but she'd only lecture me about having a real job with benefits and a steady paycheck. My few Chicago friends were either out of town or dealing with their own storm-related crises. The building's lobby Wi-Fi had been spotty for weeks, another casualty of the management company's penny-pinching. Then I thought of Michael, the neighbor down the hall. Early 50s, a retired IT consultant, he'd offered polite nods in the elevator, his steady demeanor radiating quiet confidence. I'd noticed him because he was one of the few residents who actually looked approachable, not buried in his phone or avoiding eye contact like most city dwellers. He had kind eyes, laugh lines that suggested he'd lived through his share of storms, both literal and metaphorical. Knocking on a near stranger's door at 8 p.m. felt bold, reckless even, but deadlines don't negotiate. Heart pounding not just from the deadline, I knocked. The seconds stretched like hours before the door opened, revealing Michael in a casual sweater and jeans, toolbox in hand as if he'd anticipated my crisis. His calm gaze sliced through my chaos like a lighthouse beam cutting through fog. "Wi-Fi trouble?" he asked, a faint smile softening his weathered features as he stepped into the hall without hesitation. There was something about his voice, warm, unhurried, the kind that made you want to confess your deepest secrets. "I'm so sorry to bother you," I stammered, suddenly aware of how desperate I must have looked. "I have this massive deadline and my internet just died, and I know we don't really know each other, but—" "Say no more," he interrupted gently. "I've been there, let me take a look." Back in my apartment, he knelt by the router, his hands deftly untangling cables with the precision of someone who'd solved 1,000 technical crises. I watched, mesmerized by his competence, the way he approached the problem methodically rather than with my panic button mashing. To fill the silence, we talked about Chicago's brutal winters that bite through coats, the L train's maddening delays, my endless grind to prove myself in a city that demands resilience. "Freelancing must be tough," he said, not looking up from his work. "All that uncertainty." "It has its moments," I admitted, surprised by how easy it felt to talk to him. "But I'd rather bet on myself than spend 40 years in a cubicle wondering, what if?" He glanced up then, something flickering in his expression. "I know that feeling. Spent 30 years playing it safe, following the path everyone expected, not sure it was worth it." There was weight in those words, a story I suddenly wanted to hear. But something else stirred too, a pull I hadn't felt since my early 20s when I'd buried my truth under layers of rejection and self-doubt. I'd come out at 19, back in rural Ohio, only to face cold stares and a family ultimatum, change or leave. I chose Chicago, but the scars lingered, memories of my college crush Ethan, who'd ghosted me after I'd worked up the courage to confess my feelings, leaving me wary of trust and vulnerable to anyone who showed genuine interest. Michael seemed straight, conventionally masculine in a way that reminded me of my father before disappointment hardened his features. Yet his lingering glances sparked questions I wasn't ready to voice. The way he moved with quiet confidence, the gentleness in how he handled my frantic energy, it stirred something I'd convinced myself to ignore. "There," he said finally as the router blinked green. "Should be good now. The storm knocked out a connection, but it's stable." Relief flooded me like a dam breaking. "You're a lifesaver," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I owe you dinner or drinks or a firstborn child." He laughed, a rich sound that filled the space between us. Coffee would be fine. On impulse, I offered coffee to stall his exit, not ready for this unexpected connection to end. Over steaming mugs, we talked deeper than I'd expected. He told me about his move from California 6 months ago, how retirement felt like exile after decades in the fast-paced tech world. I found myself sharing the loneliness of freelancing, how my apartment became a prison during long projects, how I'd go days speaking to no one but the barista at the corner cafe. "I used to love photography," he said quietly, staring into his coffee. "Before work consumed everything. Had this dream of documenting real people, real stories. Silly, right?" "Not silly at all," I replied, meaning it. "What stopped you?" "Life expectations, the usual suspects." His smile was rueful. "My ex-wife thought it was a waste of time, said I needed to focus on practical things." Ex-wife, the words hit me with unexpected relief, though I couldn't analyze why. We talked about the city, about dreams deferred and chances not taken. The storm outside faded to a dull roar, but inside, a different energy crackled. I shared how each design project felt like a piece of myself I was putting out into the world, how terrifying and exhilarating it was to create something from nothing. Michael nodded with understanding that felt rare, precious. "Creation takes courage," he said, "whether it's art or just being honest about who you are." The words hung in the air, weighted with meaning I wasn't ready to unpack. As he prepared to leave, checking his watch with reluctance, I felt a familiar flutter of possibility mixed with terror. "Thanks again," I said at the door. "Really, you saved my career tonight." "Just being neighborly," he replied, but his eyes suggested something more. "See you around, Alex." His "see you around" lingered like a promise, igniting a flicker of hope I'd long suppressed. But as I closed the door behind him, doubt whispered its familiar warnings. Was this connection real or another path to heartbreak? The storm raged on outside, mirroring the unrest stirring within me, the questions I wasn't brave enough to ask aloud. I spent the next 3 hours perfecting my presentation, fueled by caffeine and the strange energy Michael had left behind. The nonprofit project felt personal now. Designing materials about courage and authenticity while hiding parts of myself felt like the universe's idea of a cruel joke. But as I tweaked the final layouts, images of Michael's gentle hands and understanding smile kept interrupting my focus, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. The next evening, Michael knocked again, claiming he'd thought of a signal tweak to boost my Wi-Fi. I let him in, my pulse quickening with a thrill I couldn't justify. The excuse felt thin, but I wasn't about to question it. He worked with the same methodical precision as before, but our conversation flowed easier this time, the initial awkwardness replaced by genuine curiosity about each other. "How long have you been in Chicago?" I asked, leaning against the kitchen counter while he adjusted settings on my router. "6 months now," he said. "Still feels foreign sometimes. I spent 25 years in San Francisco, thought I'd die there." "What changed?" His hands paused in their work. "Divorce. Couldn't stay in a city full of memories. Needed a clean slate." The word divorce shouldn't have sent relief through me, but it did. "I'm sorry, that must have been hard." "Hard doesn't cover it," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "When you spend 15 years building a life with someone, losing it feels like losing yourself too." I wanted to ask more, what had gone wrong, whether he missed her, if he regretted the marriage, but something in his posture warned against pushing. Instead, I shared my own story of reinvention, how leaving Ohio at 19 had felt like shedding a skin that never quite fit. "Family pressure?" he asked, and I nodded. The classic small-town story, be normal, fit in, don't make waves. I paused, testing the waters. They had very specific ideas about what my life should look like. Understanding flickered in his eyes, and I wondered what stories he carried. We moved beyond surface-level chit-chat to something deeper, our fears about aging in a youth-obsessed culture, the weight of others' expectations, the exhaustion of pretending to be someone you're not. As the weeks passed, Michael's visits became routine. Sometimes he'd bring legitimate technical issues, my printer acting up, software glitches, a mysterious email problem. Other times, the pretenses grew thinner. He'd knock with a spare coffee or to ask if I needed anything from the store. I began looking forward to these interruptions, the way they broke up the monotony of solitary work. During his third visit, Chicago plunged into darkness. A citywide blackout left the skyline eerily empty, the usual hum of urban life replaced by an almost rural quiet. Michael arrived with candles and battery-powered lanterns, claiming his emergency supplies were better suited for sharing. We sat on my couch as darkness settled around us, the glow of a single candle casting shifting shadows on the walls. Without the distraction of screens and artificial light, conversation took on an intimate quality that felt both thrilling and dangerous. "There's something I need to tell you," Michael said, his voice careful in the darkness, "about my marriage ending." I held my breath, sensing we were approaching something significant. "I spent years being what everyone expected," he continued. "The successful career, the suburban house, the conventional marriage, but I was hiding parts of myself, denying things that felt too complicated to address." "What kinds of things?" I asked gently. "My sexuality, for one," the words came out measured like he'd practiced them. "I'm bisexual, though I didn't accept that about myself until recently. My family back east, they're very traditional, conservative. When I was growing up, being different wasn't an option." My heart raced. "How recently?" "The last few years of my marriage, I started having feelings, attractions, that I couldn't ignore anymore. My ex-wife could sense the distance, the part of me I was keeping locked away. She deserved better than someone who couldn't be fully present." I sat in stunned silence, processing this revelation. The careful way he'd watched me, the lingering glances, the pretenses for visiting, suddenly it all made sense. "My parents called it a phase when I tried to talk to them," he continued. "Said I was going through a midlife crisis, that I'd regret destroying my marriage for confusion. I believed them for a while, tried to push it down, be the husband I was supposed to be." "What changed?" I whispered. "I realized I was dying inside, suffocating under the weight of everyone else's expectations." He looked at me directly, candlelight reflecting in his eyes. I couldn't keep pretending I was someone I wasn't. The parallel to my own story was unmistakable. I found myself sharing memories I'd buried for years, growing up in rural Ohio where being different meant being wrong, the family dinners that turned into interrogations after I came out at 19. "You're confused," my mom said. I told him, the words still sharp after all these years. "This is just a phase, we'll get you help." I laughed bitterly. The help was a therapist who specialized in correcting gay teens. 3 sessions of being told I could choose to be normal if I just tried hard enough. "Christ," Michael breathed, "I'm sorry." "I left for college and never really went back. Oh, I visit for holidays when I can stand it, but it's always strained. They're waiting for me to bring home a girlfriend and announce I've seen the light." "Do they know you're gay?" "Officially, yes, but they treat it like a temporary condition, like I'm recovering from something." I pulled my knees to my chest. "My sister still asks when I'm going to settle down and give them grandchildren. She married her high school sweetheart and popped out 3 kids by 30. I'm the family disappointment." We sat in comfortable silence, our shared wounds creating an intimacy I hadn't felt in years. Michael reached over and took my hand, his fingers warm and steady. "I had a best friend in college," I continued, emboldened by his touch. "Ethan, I was crazy about him, thought he felt the same way. All those late-night talks, the way he'd look at me sometimes. I finally worked up the courage to tell him how I felt." "What happened?" "He disappeared, literally, stopped answering calls, avoided our usual hangouts, eventually transferred schools without telling me. I found out through mutual friends that he'd been uncomfortable with my feelings, thought I'd misinterpreted our friendship." Michael squeezed my hand. "That must have devastated you." "It did, but worse, it made me doubt myself. Every connection after that, I second-guessed. Was I reading too much into friendships? Were people just being nice, or was there something more? I built walls to protect myself, but they also kept me isolated." "I understand that," Michael said softly. "After my divorce, I felt like I was starting over at 50. Dating seemed impossible, too old for the young crowd, too confused for the settled ones, and coming out later in life. There's this assumption that you're either lying about being bisexual or having some kind of breakdown." "Are you having a breakdown, I mean?" He smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him. "Maybe, but if this is what a breakdown feels like, it's better than the alternative." Our hands stayed linked as we talked deeper into the night. He told me about his photography dreams, how he'd given them up for practical pursuits that his family could understand and his wife could respect. I shared my struggles with freelancing, the constant hustle for clients, the feast or famine income cycles, the way imposter syndrome crept in during quiet moments. "I mentor this kid, Jamie," I said. "They're 23, non-binary, fearlessly authentic in a way I envy. They create these incredible murals around Andersonville, vibrant, unapologetic celebrations of queer joy. Being around them makes me realize how much I've been hiding." "What do you mean?" I take safe projects, corporate logos, wedding invitations, promotional materials for businesses that don't challenge anyone. But my personal work, the stuff I create for me, it's different, more honest. I have sketch after sketch inspired by moments I've never lived but desperately wanted to. Like what? I hesitated, then decided to trust this moment. Men holding hands on the beach, couples kissing in public without looking over their shoulders, wedding photos where both grooms looked genuinely happy instead of performatively masculine. I laughed self-consciously. Sappy stuff. It's not sappy, Michael said firmly. It's hopeful. Hope is the bravest thing there is. The power flickered back on suddenly, harsh fluorescent light flooding the apartment and breaking the spell. We blinked at each other, hands still linked, the intimate darkness replaced by stark reality. I should go, Michael said reluctantly, let you get some sleep. But he didn't move immediately. We sat there, candles still burning between us, aware that something had shifted. The careful distance we'd maintained was gone, replaced by a recognition that felt both thrilling and terrifying. Michael, I started, not sure what I wanted to say. I know, he said quietly, me too. He squeezed my hand once more before standing, gathering his emergency supplies with movements that seemed reluctant, delayed. At the door, he turned back. Thank you, he said, for listening, for sharing. It's been a long time since I felt like someone really saw me. After he left, I sat in my apartment, the normal sounds of the city returning as power was restored throughout the building. But I felt different, like someone had turned up the volume on colors I'd forgotten existed. For the first time in years, the possibility of genuine connection didn't terrify me. It excited me. But doubt crept in as the night wore on. What if I was misreading the situation again? What if Michael was just being kind to a lonely neighbor? What if his confession about bisexuality was an attempt to connect with someone else who understood feeling different, not an invitation to something more? I lay awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every word, every glance, every moment our hands had touched. The smart thing would be to maintain boundaries, protect myself from another Ethan situation. But something about Michael felt different, safer, more genuine. Maybe it was his age, the way he'd already been through the fire of a failed marriage and come out talking honestly about who he was. Or maybe it was the way he'd listened to my story without trying to fix it or minimize it, just accepted it as part of who I was. Sleep finally came as dawn lightened the windows, bringing with it dreams of strong hands and gentle voices, of possibilities I'd stopped allowing myself to imagine. Our connection deepened with each encounter, like sediment building layers of trust and understanding. Michael started bringing his camera on walks through the neighborhood, showing me Chicago through his photographer's eye. We'd stop at the same coffee shop on Clark Street, claiming adjacent tables and talking for hours about everything and nothing. He showed me photos he'd taken around Andersonville, elderly couples sharing newspapers on park benches, drag queens preparing for shows in alley doorways, teenagers holding hands outside the local LGBTQ+ center. Each image captured something authentic, unguarded. His artistic eye had awakened from its long corporate slumber. You have real talent, I told him one afternoon, scrolling through images on his digital camera. These aren't tourist shots, they're stories. Years of taking pictures at company retreats and family gatherings, he said with a self-deprecating laugh. I forgot what it felt like to photograph something that mattered to me. I began looking forward to our coffee meetings with an intensity that surprised me. The anticipation would start building the night before. What would we talk about? What new photograph would he share? How long could I stretch the time before we'd have to return to our separate lives? One rainy evening, 3 weeks after the blackout confession, Michael knocked on my door looking uncharacteristically nervous. I was wondering, he started, then stopped. There's this photography exhibit opening tomorrow night in Lincoln Park. Documentary work, social justice themes. I thought maybe, if you're free. Are you asking me on a date? I said, trying to keep my voice light despite the way my heart hammered against my ribs. His cheeks colored slightly. I guess I am. I smiled, feeling younger than I had in years. I'd love to go. The exhibit was powerful, black and white photographs documenting LGBTQ+ rights movements across decades. We moved through the gallery quietly, sometimes stopping to read placards, other times just absorbing the raw emotion captured in each frame. Look at this one, Michael said, stopping in front of a photograph of two men embracing at what looked like a protest march. Their faces were streaked with tears, but their expressions held fierce joy. The courage it took to be publicly affectionate when it could cost you everything. Still costs people everything in some places, I replied, thinking of my family, of coworkers who'd made careful comments about my bachelor lifestyle. "Does it scare you?" he asked quietly, being visible. I considered the question. Terrifies me, but hiding scares me more now. He nodded, understanding exactly what I meant. We wandered through the rest of the exhibit in comfortable silence, occasionally catching each other's eye when a particular image moved us. Afterward, we walked along the lakefront despite the October chill, Chicago's skyline glittering across the water. The conversation flowed easily, but underneath ran a current of anticipation, of questions neither of us had quite worked up the courage to ask. "Alex," Michael said as we approached my building, "I need you to know something." I stopped walking, turning to face him. His expression was serious, vulnerable in a way that made my chest tight. "I haven't done this in a long time," he said. "Dating, I mean, especially not with someone like you." "Someone like me. Someone I care about this much, this quickly." He stepped closer, close enough that I could smell his cologne, see the flecks of gray in his dark hair. "I don't want to mess this up." "You won't," I said, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. He reached up and cupped my face in his hand, thumb brushing across my cheek. "I feel something here, Alex, something I thought I'd lost the ability to feel." The kiss, when it came, was gentle at first, tentative, questioning, but when I responded, leaning into him, it deepened. His lips were warm, his touch reverent, and for a moment the rest of the world disappeared. No judgmental family, no gossiping coworkers, no fears about age differences or coming out later in life, just two people who'd found something rare and precious in each other. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, I felt like I was glowing from the inside out. "Come upstairs," I whispered. Michael searched my face, making sure I meant it, then nodded. In my apartment, the familiar space felt charged with new energy. We sat on the couch, hands linked, talking quietly about what we wanted, what we were afraid of. The physical attraction was undeniable, but underneath was something deeper, a recognition, a coming home. "I want to take this slow," Michael said. "Not because I don't want you, but because I do, too much to rush." I kissed him again, pouring years of loneliness and hope into the connection. We spent the evening exploring this new intimacy, kissing, touching, learning the geography of each other's bodies with the patience of people who'd waited too long for something real. But even as I fell asleep in Michael's arms that night, feeling more content than I had in years, a small voice whispered warnings. The outside world wouldn't understand this. My family would see it as another disappointment. Coworkers would whisper about the age gap, about my lifestyle choices. The bubble of happiness we'd created was fragile, vulnerable to the sharp edges of other people's opinions. I pushed the fears away, focusing instead on Michael's steady breathing, the way his arm tightened around me protectively even in sleep. Tomorrow would bring its challenges, but tonight I was exactly where I belonged. Reality has a way of puncturing the most beautiful bubbles. The morning after our first night together, I woke to Michael making coffee in my kitchen, looking domestic and right in a way that made my chest ache with happiness. But my phone buzzed insistently on the nightstand, my sister calling from Ohio. "Alex, Mom's worried about you." Lisa's voice was tight with familiar disapproval. "She says you never call anymore, never visit. Are you seeing anyone?" I glanced at Michael, who was pretending not to listen while buttering toast. "I'm fine, Lisa, just busy with work." "That's not what I asked. Mom thinks maybe you're lonely, that you should consider settling down, finding someone nice." The emphasis on someone nice was code for someone female, and we both knew it. "I'm not lonely," I said carefully. "Because there are plenty of nice women in Chicago, Alex. Professional women who'd appreciate a man with your talents. Maybe it's time to stop," she trailed off. "Stop what?" "You know what I mean." Her voice dropped to the pseudo-whisper she'd used since childhood when discussing family secrets. "This phase you've been going through, it's been 15 years, Alex. Don't you think it's time to grow up?" The familiar shame crept up my throat, even as anger flared in my chest. "This isn't a phase, Lisa. This is who I am." "But you could choose differently. People do it all the time. Find a nice woman, get married, give mom and dad grandchildren. They're not getting any younger." I hung up before I said something we'd both regret, my hands shaking with rage and hurt. Michael appeared beside the bed, coffee mug in hand, concern etched in his features. "Family?" he asked gently. "Sister, she thinks I'm going through a phase that I could end if I just tried harder." I accepted the coffee gratefully. 15 years of being out, and they still think it's a choice I'm making to hurt them. Michael sat on the bed's edge. "My brother called last night while you were in the shower. Similar conversation." Really? He heard through the family grapevine that I was confused after my divorce, wanted to stage an intervention, help me find my way back to normal. Michael's voice was bitter. Apparently, admitting I'm bisexual means I'm having a breakdown. We held each other, finding comfort in shared understanding, but the outside world wasn't content to leave us alone. The gossip started small, as gossip always does. Sarah, a coworker from a collaborative project we'd done 6 months earlier, spotted us at a restaurant in Boys Town the following week. We weren't hiding, holding hands across the table, sharing food, talking and laughing like the couple we were becoming. But Sarah's presence felt like cold water on warm skin. "Alex," she called out, approaching our table with fake enthusiasm. "Fancy seeing you here, and who's this?" I introduced Michael with as little information as possible, but Sarah's eyes were already cataloging details: our linked hands, the age difference, the intimate way we sat close together. She made small talk for exactly long enough to gather gossip ammunition, then excused herself with promises to catch up soon. The rumors spread faster than I'd anticipated. By the following Monday, my phone buzzed with a text from another freelancer I sometimes collaborated with. "Heard you're dating an older guy. Good for you." The winky face emoji felt mocking rather than supportive. Then came the online comments. Someone I suspected Sarah had shared details on a local freelancer's Facebook group. Comments ranged from the supposedly supportive "love is love" to the barely concealed homophobic "isn't he a little old to be figuring this stuff out," to the outright cruel "daddy issues much." The age gap became a lightning rod for judgment. 15 years felt reasonable to me. Michael was mature, established, emotionally available in ways younger men rarely were. But online trolls and whispered conversations painted it as predatory or pathetic, depending on which of us they wanted to attack. "Older gay men preying on younger ones," one anonymous comment read. "It's a classic pattern." "Maybe the younger one has abandonment issues," suggested another, "looking for a father figure." The worst part was how the criticism wormed its way into my confidence. Was I looking for a father figure? Was Michael having a midlife crisis and using me as an experiment? The doubts that had plagued me after Ethan's rejection came flooding back. Michael faced his own battles. His ex-wife, somehow tipped off by mutual friends about his new relationship, called him one evening while I was over. "You lied to me," I could hear her voice through the phone, sharp with accusation. "Our entire marriage was built on lies." "Carol, that's not fair," Michael said, his voice strained. "I was figuring things out myself. I never meant to hurt you." "But you did hurt me, and now you're parading around with some guy young enough to be your son, proving that our marriage meant nothing." "That's not true. Our marriage meant everything to me. Just because I've learned things about myself doesn't erase what we had." "It erases what I thought we had," she snapped. "I feel like I never knew you at all." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Carol alternating between accusations and genuine hurt. When Michael finally hung up, he looked exhausted. "She's not entirely wrong," he said quietly. "I was hiding parts of myself during our marriage, but I was hiding them from me too." "You're not the same person you were then," I told him. "People grow, change, learn new things about themselves. That doesn't invalidate what came before." But I could see the doubt creeping into his eyes, the way the outside pressure was making him question what we had together. The judgment came from all directions. At a family barbecue, my cousin made comments about alternative lifestyles while looking directly at me. Coworkers who'd previously been friendly became awkwardly polite, as if my sexuality were contagious. Even some LGBTQ+ spaces felt unwelcoming. Younger gay men at bars would look at us with confusion or contempt, as if our relationship somehow violated unspoken community rules. "He's using you," one particularly drunk 20-something told me at a Pride event. "Older closeted guys always do this. They experiment with younger men because we're less likely to call out their shit." I wanted to defend what Michael and I had, to explain that it wasn't experiment or exploitation but genuine connection. But the accusations stung because they played into my deepest fears, that I was naive, that I was being used, that I was setting myself up for another devastating rejection. The pressure began affecting our relationship. Michael became more cautious in public, less willing to show affection or acknowledge what we meant to each other. I found myself overanalyzing his words, looking for signs that he was pulling away. "Maybe we should take a step back," he said one evening after a particularly brutal day of online comments about our inappropriate relationship. "Let things cool down." "Is that what you want?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. I want to protect you, he said. This scrutiny, this judgment, you don't deserve it. Don't I get to decide what I deserve? But I could see he was wavering, worn down by the constant criticism and doubt. The beautiful thing we'd built was being eroded by other people's opinions, their inability to understand that love doesn't follow their narrow scripts. That night, I called in sick to a client meeting and drove to Andersonville, seeking refuge in the one place that had always felt safe. I found Jamie at the community center, working on a mural that depicted LGBTQ plus elders and youth standing together in solidarity. You look like hell, they said without preamble. I told them everything, the gossip, the family pressure, Michael's growing uncertainty, my own fears about being hurt again. Jamie listened without judgment, occasionally offering a supportive sound or gesture. People are threatened by authentic love, they said finally, especially when it doesn't fit their narrow ideas about how relationships should work, but you know what? Fuck them. Easy for you to say, you're fearless. I'm terrified half the time, Jamie admitted, but I learned that other people's opinions are none of my business. The only question that matters is, do you love him? Yes. Does he love you? I think so, maybe, I don't know anymore. Then fight for it, fight for your right to love who you love, how you love them. The alternative is living someone else's life, and that's not living at all. Walking home through Andersonville, past rainbow flags and pride stickers, past couples holding hands without shame, I felt my resolve strengthening. Michael and I had found something rare and beautiful together. If the world wanted to tear it down with gossip and judgment and narrow-minded cruelty, they'd have to go through me first. The confrontation I'd been dreading came 3 weeks later, on a rainy Thursday that felt heavy with unspoken tension. Michael arrived at my apartment looking haggard, his usual composed demeanor cracked around the edges. We need to talk, he said, the 4 words that strike fear into every relationship. I poured us both coffee with hands that trembled slightly, settling across from him at my small dining table. The space between us felt vast, charged with things we'd been avoiding. This is getting messy, Alex, he began, his voice careful, measured. The gossip, the pressure from our families, the judgment everywhere we go. I'm not sure we can keep doing this. My chest tightened with familiar panic. Are you breaking up with me? I'm trying to be realistic about what we're up against. My ex-wife called again yesterday, threatening to tell our old friends that I'm having a mental breakdown. Your sister left 3 voicemails asking when you're going to come to your senses. So we let them win. The words came out sharper than I intended. We throw away what we have because other people don't understand it. Michael rubbed his face with both hands. I'm 52 years old, Alex. I spent 15 years in a marriage where I hid parts of myself, and now I'm doing it again. Hiding us, making excuses, feeling ashamed of something that should be beautiful. Then stop hiding, I said, leaning forward. Stop letting them dictate how we feel about each other. It's not that simple. The comments online, the way people look at us in public. Fuck what people think, the words exploded out of me, years of suppressed frustration boiling over. This is what I mean, Michael. This is exactly what happens when we're honest about who we are. The world punishes us for not fitting into their neat little boxes. And maybe that's a sign we should listen to them, he said quietly. I stared at him in disbelief. Listen to them. Listen to people who think our love is wrong because it doesn't match their suburban fantasy. Listen to family members who'd rather we be miserable and alone than authentic and happy. I'm trying to protect both of us. You're trying to protect yourself from discomfort, I snapped. Just like you did in your marriage. Hide the inconvenient parts, be who everyone expects, keep the peace at the expense of your own happiness. The words hit their mark. Michael's face went pale, then flushed with anger. That's not fair. Isn't it? You told me you divorced your wife because you couldn't keep pretending to be someone you weren't. Now you want to pretend we don't matter because it's socially awkward. We sat in tense silence, the weight of unsaid things heavy between us. Outside, rain drummed against the windows with increasing intensity, matching the storm building in my chest. My phone rang, cutting through the tension. Lisa's name flashed on the screen, and something in me snapped. I answered with more aggression than I'd ever used with my sister. What do you want, Lisa? Alex, I've been thinking about our conversation. The one where you told me to stop being gay for Mom's convenience. That's not what I said. Her voice was tight with frustration. I said maybe it's time to consider settling down, finding someone who could make you happy. I am happy, I interrupted. or I was, until everyone decided my happiness was their business. With that man, Alex, people are talking. Sarah posted something on Facebook about seeing you with some older guy, and the comments, they're not kind. The betrayal hit like ice water. Sarah hadn't just gossiped, she'd weaponized social media against us. Sarah posted about my private life on Facebook. She was worried about you, we all are. This man is old enough to be your father, and you barely know him. I know him better than you know your own husband, I shot back, and our age difference is none of your fucking business. Don't use that language with me, Alex. I'm trying to help you see reason. Mom is beside herself. She thinks you're going through some kind of crisis that maybe if you talk to someone. A therapist like last time, the old rage flared white-hot and familiar. Should I find another conversion therapy specialist to fix me? That's not what I meant. It's exactly what you meant. You want me to be someone I'm not so you can all pretend your brother is normal. Well, guess what? I'm never going to be normal by your standards. I'm never going to bring home a girlfriend and pop out grandchildren and live in the suburbs with a white picket fence. You're being dramatic. I'm being honest. For the first time in years, I found someone who sees me, who loves me for exactly who I am, and instead of being happy for me, you're all trying to tear it down because it makes you uncomfortable. Michael was watching me with something like awe, as if seeing me clearly for the first time, but I was too angry to care about his reaction. Alex, please, Lisa's voice softened. We just want what's best for you. No, you want what's easiest for you. You want me to disappear the inconvenient parts of myself so family dinners aren't awkward. You want me to sacrifice my happiness for your comfort. I hung up before she could respond, my hands shaking with adrenaline and fury. Michael reached across the table, covering my hand with his. That was, he started. Overdue, I finished. 20 years overdue. I was going to say brave. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something had shifted. The uncertainty in his eyes had been replaced by admiration, determination. I've been a coward, he said quietly, letting other people's opinions matter more than what we have together. And what do we have together, Michael? Because I'm not sure anymore. He was quiet for a long moment, staring at our joined hands. When he looked up, his eyes were clearer than I'd seen them in weeks. We have something real, something worth fighting for. I forgot that for a while, let the noise drown out what matters. The noise isn't going to stop. My family will keep pushing, your ex-wife will keep calling, strangers will keep commenting on our business. Then we get louder, he said, surprising me. We live our lives so authentically that their whispers don't matter. Hope flickered in my chest, tentative but growing. Are you sure? Because I can't do this halfway, Michael. I can't love you in secret and pretend we're just friends in public. I've done that before and it nearly killed me. I'm sure, he brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles gently. I'm sorry I wavered. I'm sorry I let fear make me forget what you mean to me. What do I mean to you? Everything, he said simply. You're my second chance at living honestly, at loving without apology. The words settled into the spaces that hurt, healing wounds I'd carried for years. But I needed more than words, I needed action. Prove it, I said. He tilted his head, questioning. Take me out tomorrow night, somewhere public, somewhere we might see people we know. Hold my hand, introduce me as your boyfriend. Don't let anyone make us feel ashamed of what we have. Michael nodded slowly. Where do you want to go? That new restaurant in Lincoln Park, the one all the young professionals go to, where we're guaranteed to see someone who knows someone who will spread the word. You want to make a statement. I want to live my life. If that makes a statement, so be it. That night we made love with an intensity that felt like reclaiming territory. Every kiss was a declaration, every touch a rebellion against the forces trying to tear us apart. We whispered promises in the dark to be brave together, to choose each other despite the cost, to build something beautiful on the foundation of our authentic selves. But even as I fell asleep in Michael's arms, I knew the real test was still coming. Public declaration was one thing, living with the consequences was another. The gossip would intensify, the family pressure would increase, and we'd have to decide daily whether our love was worth the price society demanded for it. Still, for the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful. We'd survived the first storm of judgment and doubt. Maybe we were strong enough to weather whatever came next. The restaurant was exactly as I'd expected, sleek, crowded, filled with Chicago's young professional crowd. We arrived fashionably late, Michael's hand steady in mine as we approached the hostess station. I spotted at least 3 people I recognized from various work events, their eyes following us with undisguised curiosity. "Table for 2, Michael told the hostess, his voice calm and confident. When she led us to a prominent table near the bar, he didn't ask for something more discreet. Instead, he pulled out my chair with old-fashioned gallantry that made several nearby diners turn to look. "You're really doing this," I murmured as he settled across from me. "We're really doing this," he corrected, reaching for my hand across the table. The evening unfolded like a coming-out party we hadn't planned. Friends and acquaintances approached our table with varying degrees of curiosity and support. Some were genuinely happy for us. "Alex, you look radiant," from a former client. Others were clearly fishing for gossip. "So how long has this been going on?" with poorly concealed judgment. Michael handled each interaction with grace I didn't know he possessed. When someone made a comment about our age difference, he smiled and said, "Alex keeps me young and I keep him grounded. Perfect balance." When a clearly disapproving colleague from my freelance network made pointed comments about lifestyle choices, Michael simply squeezed my hand and changed the subject. "You're different tonight," I observed during a lull between interruptions. "How so?" "Confident, like you've decided something important." "I have." He lifted our joined hands and kissed my knuckles, not caring who saw. "I've decided that loving you is more important than what anyone thinks about it." The gesture was small but revolutionary, a public claim that sent ripples through the restaurant's social ecosystem. I watched phones emerge, photos taken with the subtlety of amateur spies. By morning, our relationship would be documented and disseminated through Chicago's interconnected professional networks. "No regrets?" I asked. "Only that I waited so long to be this honest." We finished dinner surrounded by whispers and stolen glances, but I felt lighter than I had in years. Walking to the car, Michael pulled me into an alley between buildings and kissed me thoroughly, his hands tangled in my hair, my back against the brick wall. "I love you," he said against my lips, the words I'd been afraid to hope for. "I love you too," I replied, tasting truth and possibility. But declarations of love don't exist in a vacuum. The fallout from our public evening began the next morning with a call from my mother, the first direct contact we'd had in months. "Alexander," her voice was tight with controlled emotion, "Lisa tells me you're involved with someone inappropriate." "I'm involved with someone who makes me happy, Mom. That should be enough." "A man your father's age, what are people supposed to think?" "I don't care what people think. I care about what makes me feel alive." "This is rebellion, not love. You're acting out because we didn't approve of your choices." The word choices hit like a familiar slap. My sexuality isn't a choice, Mom, but loving myself enough to be authentic, that's a choice I'm finally brave enough to make. "Don't be dramatic, Alex. This man is using your confusion." "Stop," my voice came out sharper than I intended. "I'm 35 years old. I know the difference between love and manipulation. Michael sees me, accepts me, loves me exactly as I am. When's the last time anyone in our family did that?" Silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken hurt. "We love you," she said finally, but her voice lacked conviction. "You love your idea of who you think I should be. That's not the same thing." I hung up feeling drained but oddly free. Michael found me on my balcony an hour later, staring out at the lake. "Family call?" he asked, settling beside me. "Mother, she thinks you're using me to work through my daddy issues." He winced. "Are you having daddy issues, I mean?" I considered the question seriously. Maybe, but not in the way she thinks. I spent 35 years trying to earn approval from people who fundamentally disapprove of who I am. Being with you taught me I don't need their approval to be happy. That's healthy daddy issue resolution, then. Despite everything, I laughed. We're going to be okay, aren't we? Better than okay, he said, pulling me close. We're going to be honest. The next few weeks brought a steady stream of consequences. Some were negative. My sister stopped calling, certain colleagues became professionally distant, online trolls found new fuel for their cruelty. But unexpected support emerged too. Jamie organized a small celebration at the community center, gathering friends who cheered our courage to live openly. Former clients reached out with congratulations and new project opportunities. My landlord, an elderly gay man who'd been discreet about his 40-year relationship, left a bottle of champagne at my door with a note. About time someone in this building showed some backbone. Michael faced his own battles and revelations. His brother called to offer grudging acceptance. "I don't understand it, but you seem happy for the first time in years." His ex-wife stopped her accusations, perhaps recognizing that his newfound authenticity wasn't a rejection of their past, but an evolution of his understanding of himself. Most importantly, we began building a life together that felt sustainable. Michael moved into my apartment 6 weeks after our restaurant declaration, bringing his photography equipment and patient wisdom to my chaotic freelance existence. We developed routines, morning coffee while reviewing his latest photos, evening walks along the lake, Sunday brunches in Andersonville where we'd become regulars. "I want to do a series," he announced one morning, showing me contact sheets from his recent shoots. LGBTQ plus couples who found love later in life, people who had to fight for their right to be authentic. "Including us. Especially us," he kissed my forehead. "If we're going to be visible, might as well use that visibility to help others." The photography series became our mission. We spent weekends interviewing couples who defied social expectations to build authentic relationships. A 70-year-old woman who left her husband after 40 years to marry her female college roommate. Two men in their 60s who'd met at their children's soccer games and navigated divorces to be together. A transgender woman and her cisgender partner who'd weathered transition together in their 50s. Each story reinforced what we'd learned. Authentic love is worth whatever price society demands for it. By winter, our relationship had found its rhythm. The initial drama had settled into something deeper, not the frantic passion of new love, but the steady warmth of two people building a life together. Michael's photography series had gained attention from local galleries, and my client work had expanded as word spread that I was someone who understood authenticity. "We should have a housewarming party," Michael suggested one snowy Saturday, gesturing around our apartment, officially our apartment now, both names on the lease. "Invite everyone who matters." "Even my family?" I asked, testing the waters. "Especially your family. Give them a chance to see what we've built together." I was skeptical, but Michael's optimism was infectious. We sent invitations to a carefully curated list: Jamie and their art collective, Michael's photography friends, supportive colleagues, and yes, my family back in Ohio. To my surprise, Lisa called to accept. "I want to understand," she said, her voice different than I'd heard in months. "Alex, I've been thinking about what you said, about wanting what's easiest for us instead of what's best for you. Maybe I owe you an apology." The party took place on a bitter February evening, our apartment warm with candles and good food and nervous energy. Lisa arrived first, looking uncertain but determined, carrying a bottle of wine and what appeared to be genuine curiosity. "So you're Michael," she said, shaking his hand with careful politeness. "And you're the sister Alex talks about constantly," he replied with the charm that had won me over. "He's very proud of you, you know, your kids, your nursing degree, the way you hold your family together." I watched Lisa's defensive posture soften slightly as Michael asked thoughtful questions about her work, her children, her life beyond her opinions about mine. By the time other guests arrived, she was laughing at his stories about learning to navigate Chicago winters. The evening unfolded better than I'd dared hope. Jamie held court in the kitchen, regaling Lisa with tales of their community activism while she asked surprisingly informed questions about LGBTQ plus youth resources. Michael's photographer friends shared stories about their own unconventional relationships, second marriages, age gap romances, partnerships that had weathered public scrutiny. "You know," Lisa said quietly, finding me on the balcony where I'd stepped out for air, "he looks at you the way David looked at me when we were newlyweds, like you hung the moon." "David still looks at you that way," I pointed out. "Not quite the same, but maybe that's what 20 years of marriage does." She paused, gathering courage. "Alex, I owe you an apology, a big one. I let fear make me cruel, and that's not who I want to be." "Fear of what?" "Of losing you completely, of Mom and Dad's disappointment, of not knowing how to explain my gay brother to my conservative neighbors." She laughed ruefully. "Stupid reasons when I list them like that." "Not stupid, human. I was afraid, too, that loving Michael would cost me what little family acceptance I had left. And no." I looked through the window at Michael, who was showing Lisa's husband his photographs while gesturing animatedly. "Now I know that love doesn't diminish when you share it honestly. It grows." Lisa hugged me then, the first genuine embrace we'd shared since I was a teenager. "I want to do better," she whispered. "I want to be the sister you deserve." The party marked a turning point in more ways than one. Family relationships began healing slowly, with careful conversations and genuine efforts to understand rather than judge. My parents remained distant but less actively disapproving. Lisa started calling regularly, including Michael in her questions about my life. Professionally, our visibility became an asset rather than a liability. Clients seeking authentic representation for LGBTQ campaigns began seeking me out specifically. Michael's photography series was featured in a prominent gallery show titled Love Later, Stories of Authentic Connection. We were interviewed for a local magazine about relationships that defy conventional timelines. Do you ever worry about the age difference? The journalist asked during our interview. Every relationship has challenges, Michael replied thoughtfully. Age difference, career demands, family expectations, differing life experiences. The question isn't whether challenges exist, it's whether you're committed to working through them together. What advice would you give to other couples facing similar judgment? She asked me. Know the difference between criticism that comes from love and criticism that comes from discomfort, I said. People who truly care about your well-being want you to be happy, even if your happiness looks different than they expected. People who are just uncomfortable want you to conform to their expectations. Spring brought unexpected news. Morrison and Associates, the firm whose deadline had sparked our first meeting, called with their biggest project yet. They'd been following my work, impressed by campaigns that spoke to authenticity and human connection. We want you to lead our Pride campaign this year, the creative director explained over lunch. Full creative control, significant budget, citywide visibility. Interested? I was interested, but I wanted Michael involved too. His photography had captured something essential about love that transcended demographics and expectations. Together, we pitched a campaign concept. Love looks like this, portraits of real couples accompanied by their stories of finding authentic connection. The campaign launched in June, perfectly timed for Pride Month. Billboards throughout Chicago featured Michael's photographs, couples of all ages, orientations, and backgrounds, each accompanied by a brief story of love discovered, declared, or defended. Our own story was included, though not prominently, just one thread in the larger tapestry of human connection. The response was overwhelming. The campaign went viral nationally, with other cities requesting permission to adapt it locally. We received messages from couples who saw themselves reflected in the work, from family members who gained new understanding, from young people who found hope in seeing love celebrated in all its forms. But the most meaningful response came from an unexpected source. Ethan, my college crush, reached out through Facebook after seeing the campaign featured in a national magazine. Alex, his message read, "I saw your work in Pride coverage and wanted to reach out. I owe you an apology that's about 15 years overdue. I handled my confusion about sexuality very poorly in college and I hurt you in the process. Seeing your campaign, reading about your relationship with Michael, it's clear you've built something beautiful. I'm sorry it took me this long to say I'm sorry." I showed the message to Michael, unsure how to respond. "How does it feel?" he asked, "getting that closure?" Strange, like completing a circle I didn't know was still open. I considered the question more deeply. Good, I think. It doesn't change what happened, but it removes some of the sting. I wrote back, thanking Ethan for his apology and sharing that I hoped he'd found his own path to authenticity. It felt good to close that chapter with forgiveness rather than bitterness. I'm writing this on our 1-year anniversary, not of our relationship, which has evolved too organically for precise dating, but of that first public dinner when we decided to stop hiding. It's been a year of challenges and growth, of learning that visibility comes with both costs and unexpected gifts. Michael's photography series has become a book, with proceeds supporting LGBTQ youth programs. My client base has shifted toward organizations and campaigns focused on authentic representation. We've become accidental advocates, speaking at events about the importance of living honestly regardless of timing or social expectations. More importantly, we've built a daily life that feels sustainable and joyful. Morning coffee while reviewing Michael's contact sheets from recent shoots. Evening walks along the lake, talking through client projects and family dynamics and dreams for the future. Weekend trips to photograph couples for Michael's ongoing series, collecting stories of love that defies conventional scripts. My family continues healing. Lisa visits regularly now, her children fascinated by their Uncle Mike and his camera equipment. My parents remain cautious but have stopped actively disapproving. Mom sent a card on my birthday that simply said, "I hope you're happy." It wasn't an embrace of my choices, but it wasn't rejection either. Sometimes progress comes in small increments. Michael's family has been slower to accept, but his brother called last month to announce his visit to Chicago. "I want to meet the man who made you smile in family photos for the first time in decades," he said. Growth takes different forms for different people. The gossip has largely died down, replaced by new scandals and social media controversies. We're old news now, just another couple navigating life together. It's remarkably freeing to be boring. But the most important change is internal. I no longer wake up wondering if I'm worthy of love, if my authenticity costs too much, if hiding would be easier. I've learned that the right person doesn't make you question your worth, they help you discover it. Michael didn't complete me, he helped me complete myself. Any regrets? Michael asked this morning, echoing the question from our restaurant declaration. Only that I waited so long to believe I deserved this, I replied. We found each other when we were ready, he said, kissing my forehead in the gesture that's become as familiar as breathing. Perfect timing. He's right, all those years of hiding, of accepting less than I deserved, of believing other people's limitations were my truth. They led me to this moment, to this man, to this life we've built together. The Wi-Fi glitch that brought us together was just technology failing, nothing more mysterious than circuits and signals. But what we built from that moment of connection, that's been pure magic. The kind of magic that comes from two people brave enough to love authentically, publicly, without apology. To anyone reading this who's struggling with family expectations, social judgment, or their own fears about living honestly, your truth is worth fighting for. Love, real, authentic, transformative love exists for you too. It might not look like what others expect, might not follow conventional timelines or social scripts, but it's there, waiting for you to be brave enough to claim it. We're still here, Michael and I, building a life where we're free to be ourselves. Every honest moment feels like a small rebellion against a world that wants us to hide. We refuse to hide. We refuse to apologize for loving each other exactly as we are. The storm that brought us together has long since passed, but the love it sparked continues growing, one authentic day at a time.